Welcome, everyone, to Beyond the Unknown. I'm Alex Carter,
And I'm Olivia Reyes.
and we are diving headfirst into our very first deep dive here.
That's right, Alex. We're going way back in time tonight, all the way to 1639.
1639.
Yeah, to the early days of the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
So we're talking about the time when life was very different, when
Yeah.
people saw the world through a very different lens.
Absolutely. And our source for this deep dive, a report detailing a truly bizarre event.
A report. What kind of report?
It offers a glimpse into that world, a world where the divine played a much bigger role in everyday life.
Okay, so what exactly are we dealing with here? Strange lights in the sky? Unexplained movement?
There's unexplained movement for sure, and even a bit of involuntary teleportation.
Involuntary teleportation. Now you've got me intrigued.
Get ready to be, because this one is a real head scratcher.
To understand just how weird things get, we need to set the scene first, Olivia.
Okay.
Can you paint us a picture of life in the Massachusetts Bay Colony way back in 1639?
Imagine a community of Puritan settlers, deeply religious, with very strict beliefs.
Right.
Beliefs that shaped every aspect of their lives. For these people, the hand of God was everywhere.
So anything outside the norm?
Was probably seen as a sign from above, or at the very least something pretty sinister.
In this context, anything unusual would have been truly unsettling.
Right. And at the heart of this story is a man named John Winthrop.
Winthrop, he was the governor of the colony, right?
He was, and lucky for us, he was a meticulous record keeper.
That's what we like to hear.
His journals offer a fascinating window into this period.
A window into the past.
And what makes his account of this particular event even more compelling is his background. He was a lawyer by trade.
So we can assume his writing was reliable?
Yes, detailed, accurate, the whole 9 yards.
This wasn't just some random guy scribbling down his dream.
Exactly. So when Winthrop writes about something like this, we should probably sit up and take notice.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. Lay it on me. What exactly happened on this fateful night?
It was March 1st, 1639. 3 men were rowing down the Muddy River,
The Muddy River.
which is near what we know as Boston today.
Okay.
These 3 men, they're rowing along when suddenly they see it. A great light in the sky.
A great light, huh? So I'm picturing like a bonfire in the sky. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, this wasn't just any light. According to the report, it was described as being 3 yards square.
Wait, 3 yards square? Are we talking like the size of a small car floating in the sky?
Pretty much. That's enormous. What kind of light could possibly be that big?
I don't know. That's what we're here to figure out.
And it gets even stranger. This light, it wasn't just sitting there, it was moving. And not in any normal way. It wasn't like the sun or the moon.
Okay, this is where it gets good, right?
Yeah.
Tell you started doing loop-de-loops or something.
Sort of, Winthrop describes it as flaring up brightly whenever it was stationary and then contracting and darting across the sky.
Okay.
And get this, he compares its movement to, wait for it, a swine.
Hold on. A swine. Like a pig. Are you being serious right now?
I kid you not, that's what the report says.
That's bizarre, to say the least.
Yeah.
So we've got this massive square-shaped light zipping around the sky like a pig. What happened next? Did it land and start oinking?
Actually, it vanished.
Oh.
But that's not the end of the story.
Oh. I have a feeling things are about to take a turn for the pitier. Even weirder.
You'd be right. After the light disappeared, the 3 men suddenly found themselves a mile upstream from where they'd started.
Hold up, wait. How is that even possible? They were rowing downstream, right?
That's the truly strange part. They had absolutely no memory of rowing against the current.
So it's like they were just transported.
Like they were just transported.
Okay, now this is starting to sound like something straight out of a science fiction novel. And we're talking about 1639 here.
I know. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just a one-time event.
Don't tell me other people saw this crazy light too.
You got it. Winthrop's report mentions several other credible people seeing similar lights in the same area.
And all after this initial sighting. So multiple witnesses. A giant swine-like light in the sky. And sudden inexplicable teleportation. I don't even know what to say.
I know, right? It's definitely a lot to process. The big question, of course, is what was it? What did these people actually see that night on the Muddy River?
All right, Olivia. Let's hear it. Hit me with some possible explanations. What are researchers saying about all this? Could this all be explained away as some natural phenomenon? Like maybe it was just some weird weather event or something?
Well, some researchers have suggested just that. They've pointed to things like ignis fatuus, also known as will-o'-the-wisp.
Will-o'-the-wisp. Isn't that like swamp gas? I thought that was just an old wives' tale.
It's a real phenomenon, actually. Gases from decaying organic matter in marshes and swamps can combust when they come into contact with air, and that creates a flickering light.
Okay, I see. But could that really explain what these guys saw? I mean, a light that big lasting for what, hours? And then there's the whole teleportation thing. Does swamp gas do that too?
That's where things get tricky. The light's size, duration, and behavior don't really line up with typical Ignis Bacchus sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And the teleportation, well, there's really no scientific explanation for that.
Right. Okay, so swamp gas is probably out.
Mm-hmm.
What else is on the table here? We are talking about Puritans here, right? Deeply
Yeah.
religious folks. So could this have been some kind of psychological thing? A mass hallucination maybe fueled by their beliefs?
That's another angle to consider.
Hmm.
We have to remember that the Puritans saw the world very differently than we do today. Everything was interpreted through a religious lens for these people.
Right. So maybe they saw this light and immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was a message from God or a sign of the apocalypse.
It's possible, but you have to wonder, wouldn't they have recognized something as simple as swamp gas? They lived in a marshy area, they must have seen it before. And what about that sudden shift in location? That's a pretty concrete detail to just chalk up to imagination.
That's a really good point. So if it wasn't swamp gas and it wasn't some collective hallucination, what are we left with?
Well, some people believe this could be one of America's earliest UFO sightings.
Hold on. A UFO sighting in 1639. Are you pulling my leg?
Maybe, maybe not. Think about it. Strange lights, erratic movement, and that feeling of missing time. These are all hallmarks of modern UFO reports.
You know, you're right. They do sound pretty similar. But
Absolutely.
calling this a UFO sighting, that's a pretty bold claim.
I agree, it is a bold claim. But is it really so far-fetched? We're talking about an era long before airplanes, before electricity, before any of the things we take for granted today.
Right.
So what if what they saw was something truly beyond their comprehension?
Okay, I'll bite. So if we entertain this UFO idea for a minute, what are the experts saying?
We actually have some insights from historians who specialize in Puritan studies and early American records.
Perfect. Let's hear it. What do they have to say about all of this?
One expert emphasizes how the Puritans, as I said, saw everything through a religious lens. They suggest that these colonists might have interpreted the lights as divine messages or warnings.
That makes sense given their worldview. But does that explain everything? I mean, what about the teleportation?
That's where our second expert comes in. They acknowledge that even if this wasn't a UFO as we understand it today, the event still reflects humanity's timeless fascination with the unknown.
So we've got one expert saying it's all about their religious perspective, and another saying it's more about our inherent fascination with things we can't explain. Two very different takes, but both pretty compelling.
Exactly, and that's what makes this story so fascinating. It forces us to confront the limits of our own understanding and to consider the possibility that there are things out there that we may never fully grasp.
You know, it's almost like looking through a window into the past. Seeing how these people grappled with something so strange, so inexplicable, it's fascinating.
Absolutely. It really makes you wonder how we would react if something like that happened today. I mean, would we even believe it ourselves?
I think a lot of people would be skeptical, to say the least.
Yeah.
Especially with all the hoaxes and misinformation we have to deal with these days. It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
You're not wrong. But that's why it's so important to examine these historical accounts with an open mind, to consider the possibility that there are things beyond our current understanding.
It makes you think, right? About all the things we know now that would have seemed impossible. Just a few hundred years ago, electricity, space travel, the internet. Who knows what the future holds?
You've got that right. And maybe, just maybe, events like this, one can offer us a glimpse into that future, or at least make us question what we think we know about the world.
So let's go back to that 1639 sighting for a second. We've talked about some possible explanations, but what really gets me is this whole teleportation thing. I mean, how do you even begin to explain that?
It's definitely one of the most baffling aspects of this whole case, and honestly, there's no easy answer. Some people have suggested that maybe the men were simply disoriented, that they lost track of time and distance while they were watching the light.
But you know, Winthrop describes them as being sober and discreet men. Surely they would have noticed if they were rowing for miles in the wrong direction.
You'd think so, right? But then again, we're talking about an event that seems to defy all logic. Maybe their perception of time and space was somehow altered by whatever they witnessed. I mean, who knows?
We're wading into some pretty deep waters here, Olivia. Are we talking about time warps or something?
I don't know about time warps, but something unusual definitely happened that night. Something that we may never fully understand.
Isn't it kind of unsettling, though, To think that there could be forces at work that we have absolutely no control over?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely challenges our sense of order and predictability. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe it's good to be reminded that there are still mysteries out there, things that make us question our assumptions and expand our horizons.
I like that perspective, Olivia.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that we don't have all the answers.
Not even close. And who knows, maybe someday we'll have a better understanding of what really happened that night in 1639. Maybe we'll even find evidence to support one of the theories we've discussed.
Until then, I guess we're left to ponder all the possibilities. Was it a natural phenomenon? A psychological event? Or an early UFO encounter?
Or maybe something else entirely. Something we haven't even considered yet.
I like it. The unknown is a vast and mysterious place, Olivia. And sometimes it seems like the more we learn, the less we actually know.
That's true. But that's what makes exploration so exciting, right? The thrill of discovery, the possibility of finding something truly groundbreaking.
Absolutely. And speaking of exploration, there's one more detail about this case that I find particularly intriguing. Remember how Winthrop mentioned that other people saw similar lights in the same area after that initial sighting?
Yes, that's right. It wasn't just a one-time event. It seems like there was a whole cluster of sightings around that time period.
That's wild. It makes you wonder, was there something specific about that location? Was there something drawing these lights to the Muddy River?
It's a fascinating question. Some researchers have speculated that there might be some kind of energy vortex or anomaly in that area, like something that could explain why this happened.
An energy vortex. Now that sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie, like Star Trek or something.
I know. It sounds pretty far out there. But there are actually some scientists who believe that such things really exist. They theorize that certain locations on Earth have unusual electromagnetic properties, ones that could attract strange phenomena like this.
So are you saying that the Muddy River could be some kind of interdimensional portal? Like a gateway to another dimension?
I'm not saying that definitively, but it's definitely an interesting possibility to consider, and it would help to explain why there were multiple sightings in that specific location, right?
Okay, now my mind is officially blown. So we've got a mysterious light, possible teleportation, multiple witnesses, and now we're throwing energy vortexes into the mix. What else could possibly happen?
It's a lot to take in, I know. But that's the beauty of these deep dives. We get to explore all the different angles, all the possible explanations, and ultimately it's up to you, the listener, to decide what you believe.
That's right. We're not here to give you definitive answers, but rather to present the evidence, examine the theories, and encourage everyone to think critically about the world around them.
And to embrace the mystery, to acknowledge that there are still things out there that we simply don't fully understand.
And maybe, just maybe, that's a good thing. Maybe a little mystery keeps life interesting.
I couldn't agree more. Feels like we stumbled upon a puzzle with most of the pieces missing.
But I think that's what makes these stories so captivating. The mystery,
Yeah.
It keeps us coming back for more.
Yeah.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle without all the pieces. We may never have the full picture.
Right.
But it doesn't mean we can't have fun trying to figure it out.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're trying to do here on Beyond the Unknown, right? Explore these fascinating mysteries and try to make sense of them piece by piece.
Absolutely. So let's go back to this strange event from 1639. We've got multiple witnesses, a detailed account from a well-respected source, and a whole bunch of unexplained phenomena that just defy easy categorization.
We've talked about the possibility of natural explanations, things like ignis fatuus, or some freak weather event, but the sheer size, duration, and behavior of the light, not to mention that alleged teleportation, make those explanations pretty tough to swallow.
And we also explored the psychological and cultural context.
Right.
Remember, these are Puritans.
Right.
So they might have interpreted the event through their own unique belief system.
Yeah.
But even then, the physical details are really hard to ignore.
Yeah. And of course, we entertain the idea that this could be one of America's earliest UFO sightings. While there's no definitive proof, the similarities to modern UFO reports are certainly intriguing.
So where does that leave us? Are we any closer to understanding what actually happened that night on the Muddy River?
Honestly, I don't think so. And we may never know for sure. But that's okay, because sometimes the most compelling mysteries are the ones that remain unsolved.
I like that. It's those unsolved mysteries that really force us to use our imaginations.
Yeah.
To think outside the box and consider possibilities that might seem impossible.
Absolutely. And perhaps more importantly, they remind us that there's still a sense of wonder and awe to be found in the world. Even in this age of technology and information overload, there are still things that can make us stop and say, wow, I can't explain that.
It brings us back to why we do these deep dives in the first place. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about exploring the unknown, embracing the mystery, and keeping that sense of wonder alive.
Exactly. Because ultimately, isn't that what makes life so fascinating? The fact that there's always something more to discover, something that challenges our understanding and pushes us to expand our horizons.
You're right. So to everyone listening out there, let's take a moment to think about this story. This event happened way back in the early days of America. What does it tell us about our own enduring fascination with the unexplained? Do we still look to the skies with that same mix of fear and wonder as those early settlers did?
It's a question worth pondering. I mean, what mysteries are hiding right in our own backyards, just waiting to be uncovered?
Well, I think it's safe to say that tonight we've uncovered more questions than answers.
That's often the case with these deep dives, isn't it? The more we learn, the more we realize just how much we don't know.
You know, before we wrap up, there's one more thing I'd like to touch on.
Okay.
It's something that's been bugging me ever since we started talking about this case.
Oh, what's that?
Well, remember how we talked about the Puritans and how they saw the world through a religious lens?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Their belief system was deeply intertwined with their daily lives.
Right. And it got me thinking about the nature of belief itself. How do our beliefs shape the way we perceive the world? And how do those perceptions influence our interpretations of the unknown?
That's a really insightful question. I think it's a question that's central to our exploration of the unknown.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If those three men on the muddy river hadn't been Puritans, would they have seen that light in the same way? Would they have even attributed it to a supernatural force?
It's hard to say for sure. Perhaps they would have simply dismissed it as some strange natural phenomenon, or maybe they would have been even more terrified not having the framework of their religious beliefs to make sense of it.
It's fascinating to consider, isn't it? How our individual beliefs, our cultural backgrounds, our personal experiences, all of these things filter our perceptions of the world around us.
Absolutely, and it makes you wonder how much of what we perceive as reality is actually shaped by these pre-existing biases and assumptions.
You know, in a way, I think that's what makes the study of the unknown so compelling. It forces us to confront those biases, to challenge our assumptions, and to consider the possibility that there are things out there that we may never fully understand.
I couldn't agree more. It's a humbling experience, to say the least.
But also a very exciting one.
I agree. It's the excitement of the unknown, the possibility of discovery that keeps us coming back for more.
So with that in mind, let's shift gears a bit and explore another aspect of this case that we haven't really delved into yet.
Sure, what are you thinking of?
Well, remember how we talked about the possibility of an energy vortex or anomaly in the area of the Muddy River?
Yes, that was one of the more speculative theories we discussed. But it's definitely an intriguing one.
It is, isn't it? I mean, if such a thing were to exist, what implications would that have for our understanding of the universe?
That's a big question, and one that we may not have the answers to, but I think it's a question worth exploring.
I agree. So let's dive into that rabbit hole for a bit. What do we actually know about energy vortexes? And is there any scientific evidence to support their existence?
Well, the idea of energy vortexes has been around for centuries. In many ancient cultures, certain locations were believed to possess special energy or spiritual significance.
Right, like Stonehenge or the pyramids of Egypt.
Exactly, those are prime examples. But in more recent times, the concept of energy vortexes has been embraced by some proponents of New Age spirituality and alternative medicine.
So not exactly mainstream science.
Not quite. However, there are some scientists who are exploring the possibility that certain locations on Earth might have unusual electromagnetic properties.
Interesting. What kind of properties are we talking about here?
Well, some researchers believe that these locations might exhibit fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field, or unusual concentrations of telluric currents.
Caloric currents, those are the electrical currents that flow through the Earth's crust, right?
That's right. And some scientists theorize that these currents might be influenced by factors such as underground water flow, mineral deposits, or even tectonic activity.
Okay, I'm starting to follow. But how does all of this relate back to the events on the Muddy River?
Well, some people believe that the strange light, the erratic movements, and even the alleged teleportation could be explained by the presence of an energy vortex in that area.
So are we saying that this energy vortex could have somehow affected the perceptions of those three men? Or even altered the fabric of space-time?
That's one possibility. Another is that the vortex might have attracted some kind of unknown entity or energy form that was responsible for the phenomena witnessed.
Okay, now we're really getting into the realm of speculation, but it's definitely a fascinating thought.
It is, isn't it? It's the kind of thought that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the world.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. They push us to think outside the box, to explore the boundaries of our understanding, and to embrace the mystery of the unknown.
Absolutely. And that's what makes life so much more interesting.
Well said, well said. But before we get too carried away with our existential musings, let's bring things back down to earth for a moment.
Sounds good to me. Where are we headed next?
Well, I think it's time we took a closer look at the historical context surrounding this event.
Ah, yes. The Puritan perspective. A fascinating and often misunderstood aspect of this story.
Exactly. I think it's crucial to understand the cultural and religious beliefs of the time period in order to fully appreciate the significance of these sightings.
I couldn't agree more. So let's delve into the world of the Puritans. Who were they? What did they believe? And how did their worldview shape their interpretation of the unknown?
Great questions. Let's start by talking about who the Puritans were and what brought them to the shores of America.
The Puritans were a group of English Protestants who emerged in the 16th century during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. They were deeply dissatisfied with the Church of England, which they believed had retained too many Catholic practices.
So they were essentially reformers who wanted to purify the church, hence the name Puritans.
Exactly. They sought to establish a more rigorous and disciplined form of Protestantism based on their interpretation of the Bible.
And their dissatisfaction with the Church of England eventually led them to seek religious freedom in the New World.
That's right. In the early 17th century, a group of Puritans known as the Pilgrims famously sailed to America aboard the Mayflower and established the Plymouth colony in 1620.
And the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where our mysterious light sighting took place, was founded shortly thereafter.
Yes, in 1630, a much larger group of Puritans led by John Winthrop landed in Massachusetts and established the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
And it was in this colony, a community deeply rooted in religious beliefs and practices, that our strange events unfolded.
Absolutely. And understanding the Puritan worldview is essential to understanding their reaction to these unexplained phenomena.
So let's talk about that worldview. What were some of the core beliefs and values of the Puritans?
Well, the Puritans believed in the absolute sovereignty of God and the inherent sinfulness of humanity. They saw the world as a battleground between good and evil, and they believed that their lives were predestined by God.
So they were a pretty serious bunch. Not a lot of room for frivolity or lightheartedness in their worldview?
Not exactly. They believed in hard work, discipline, and self-denial. They also placed a great emphasis on education and literacy, as they believed that everyone should be able to read and interpret the Bible for themselves.
Interesting. So given their strong religious beliefs and their view of the world as a battleground between good and evil, how do you think they would have interpreted these strange lights in the sky?
Well, I think it's safe to say that they would have seen them as signs from God, either messages or warnings.
Makes sense. Anything outside the ordinary would have been viewed through a spiritual lens.
Absolutely. They believed that God was constantly intervening in their lives, both for good and for ill. So a strange light in the sky would have been interpreted as a direct communication from the divine.
And given their worldview, it's not hard to imagine them seeing it as a portent of something significant, perhaps even a sign of the apocalypse.
Exactly. The Puritans were constantly on the lookout for signs of the end times. And a celestial phenomenon of this magnitude would have certainly fueled their anxieties.
So in a way, these sightings might have actually reinforced their religious beliefs and strengthened their resolve to live righteous lives.
That's a very astute observation. It's entirely possible that these events served to deepen their faith and solidify their community.
But at the same time, these sightings might have also sown seeds of doubt and fear. After all, if God was sending them signs, what did those signs mean? And what did they portend for the future?
That's a great point. The unknown can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying, and I'm sure these sightings evoked a complex mix of emotions in those who witnessed them.
It's like walking a tightrope between faith and fear, trying to make sense of the inexplicable while clinging to your beliefs.
Exactly, and that's the human condition in a nutshell, isn't it? We're constantly grappling with the unknown, trying to find meaning and purpose in a world that often seems chaotic and unpredictable.
But in that struggle, in that search for understanding, lies the essence of what it means to be human.
I couldn't agree more. And it's that very essence that we're trying to tap into here on Beyond the Unknown. We're exploring the mysteries, pondering the possibilities, and celebrating the enduring human fascination with all things strange and unexplained.
It's amazing to think that these events we've been discussing took place nearly 400 years ago.
I know, it really puts things into perspective. We're here centuries later still talking about this strange light in the sky.
It makes you realize that the human fascination with the unknown is timeless.
It really is.
And it's that enduring fascination that keeps us coming back for more here on Beyond the Unknown.
Yeah, we're diving deep into the heart of these mysteries.
And hopefully encouraging you to think critically about the world around us.
Exactly. We're not here to provide all the answers, but rather to spark curiosity and inspire you to explore the unknown for yourselves.
Because ultimately, isn't that what it's all about? Discovering new things, challenging our assumptions, and expanding our understanding of the universe.
Absolutely.
Well said. Olivia, well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Winthrop Chronicles, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned.
Okay.
We started with a simple report, a few lines describing a strange light in the sky. But as we dug deeper, we uncovered a story that was far more complex and intriguing than we could have imagined.
We explored natural explanations, psychological interpretations, and even the possibility of an early UFO encounter.
We delved into the historical context, examining the Puritan worldview and how it might have shaped their perception of these events.
And we even ventured into the realm of speculation, considering the possibility of energy vortexes and their potential impact on the fabric of space-time.
It's been a wild ride, to say the least.
It really has. But I think through it all, we've come to appreciate the power of the unknown.
The unknown can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying.
It can.
But it's also a source of endless fascination and wonder.
It challenges us to think differently, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp.
And that's what makes life so much more interesting, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
So to all of our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop searching for the truth.
No matter how strange or elusive it may seem.
Because the truth is out there somewhere.
It is.
Just waiting to be discovered. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll finally uncover the secrets of that mysterious light over the muddy river.
Until then, we'll keep searching, keep learning, and keep sharing our discoveries with you right here on Beyond the Unknown.
So join us next time as we delve into another fascinating mystery, exploring the strange and unexplained corners of our world.
Until then, keep your minds open, your curiosity alive, and never be afraid to ask the big questions.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.